All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, risers, debate night is tonight, and you know we get extremely unironically excited for these things here. By the way, make sure to join us live on YouTube for our pre- and post-debate coverage so that you do not have to suffer through the cable news conventional wisdom factory. This debate, of course, comes at a particularly dramatic moment in the primary race. Pete is riding a surge of white support on the strength of fawning media coverage and boomer catnip of aspirational vagueness wrapped in a trailblazing identity. Warren has fallen off in the polls a bit as Pete has stolen her thunder and as she has reminded everyone about the terrible political instincts that made us all worried that she would get crushed by Trump to start with. A donor class freakout has led two new ruling elite candidates to jump into the race, and with this as the backdrop, there really is so much that could be revealed tonight. Will Warren release another plan that makes everything worse again on Medicare for all? What barely intelligible and vaguely racist thing will tumble headlong out of Joe Biden's mouth? Will the candidates commit to using their executive power to ban that damn High Hope song now that Pete and his supporters have ruined it for all time? There are, however, a few things we know with certainty. The debate is being hosted by MSNBC and The Washington Post. A portion will be moderated by Rachel Maddow, so you can bet it will include another ponderous section on impeachment, a subject, of course, on which all of the candidates agree. Warren's Medicare for All backtrack has all but guaranteed that health care will once again be a central focus. And I'm hopeful we'll spend some time on the future of the planet and how the candidates would handle their role as commander-in-chief. But now that we've got a few of these debates under our belt, it's possible to observe a few trends regarding how these things go and what, at the end of the day, in the polls is likely to change. Now, as I've observed previously, most of the poll movement that we've seen so far in this primary has been caused by white liberals searching for their Goldilocks candidate. First Beto, then Pete, then Kamala, then Warren, and now back to Pete again. In contrast, Bernie's young and working class coalition has been largely steady, and polling consistently shows that his supporters are the most committed. Biden's old working class supporters have also been incredibly consistent in spite of the fact that he has been absolutely abysmal in every one of these debates. It's really the professional managerial class liberals who are up for grabs, the type of people who are telling pollsters that their first choice is Buttigieg and their second choice is Warren, or vice versa. These are the people, of course, that elite media is directly pitched to. This is the audience producers, anchors, and advertisers all have in mind when they're creating content. So it's no surprise this is also the audience that is most influenced by whoever CNN and MSNBC judge to have won the debate. So what have we seen so far? Debate 1, of course, featured Kamala and her ready for t-shirts attack on Biden. Pundits raved. She jumped from 6 to 14% in the morning consult tracker. Debates 2 and 3, Elizabeth Warren turns in solid performances, but she's not yet a frontrunner, so mostly avoids any scrutiny. Pundits praise her. The Washington Post writes that, in a grittily poetic way, Warren's spiel is akin to that of a folksy troubadour. She is the Springsteen of campaign 2020. The folksy troubadour steadily rises in the polls. Some national polls even have her surpassing Biden in that frontrunner spot. Debate 4, Bernie Sanders, coming off a heart attack, has probably the best debate of his career. Pundits instead decide, for reasons completely incomprehensible to me, that it was really Pistol Pete who won the night, thus launching us into our current cycle of pro-Pete propaganda and hellish summer camp dance frenzies. Remember this?
Klobuchar, it was amazing to see the moderates say, you know what, enough. We're tired of the wokeonomics. We want to actually have a voice here. And I thought that Pete, you got a new candidate in this race, Pistol Pete, passionate Pete, not the polite Pete. He was tough on Syria. He was tough on guns. He went back at folks. So I thought that you might see a matchup going forward if Biden fades between a Pete and a Warren. It would be very, very interesting.
Pistol Pete. Honestly, even with that glowing coverage, he's only ticked up a few points nationally, but the overwhelmingly white states of Iowa and New Hampshire have responded more forcefully to the media narrative and billionaire donor cash that undergirds the entire Pete con. So, for debate 5, if you're looking for what will actually move the polls, look to the candidates in the wine track lane. That means Warren and Pete predominantly, but also Kamala and Amy Klobuchar. And of course, this is the first time Pete will really have a target on his back. These candidates are essentially locked in a zero-sum battle for affluent white liberal support. And after all, Warren's rise came at Kamala's expense, and now Pete's rise is coming at Warren's expense. Each one of them believes that their path to victory lies in a Barack Obama-like path of a big win in Iowa, finally shaking some of Biden's support loose. Now, personally, I think it's a very dubious theory of the case. None of these folks has the political skill of Barack Obama, but that is what each one is counting on. So 2 other things to keep an eye on here. First, as we discussed yesterday, the New York Times is reporting that the other candidates are afraid of Tulsi Gabbard, and frankly, they probably should be. She doesn't play by the unspoken rules of who you're allowed to critique and why, so she is always a wild card. Last debate, she clearly wanted to challenge Warren on her foreign policy views, something that has increasingly become a liability for the Massachusetts senator as she struggled to respond in real time to events in Bolivia and Israel. I'd keep an eye on that dynamic. And then the other question is Andrew Yang. He's turned in solid and compelling debate performances by critiquing the absurdly performative nature of the whole thing, and also by offering a self-deprecating charm combined with a bold vision. But after having some real momentum, his campaign does appear to be a bit stuck. Based on his latest ads, Andrew's consultants have clearly advised him to embrace a more traditional campaign look and feel. Will that show up on the debate stage tonight? And will it enable him to gain supporters outside of his diehard fan base? The Iowa caucuses are now only 75 days away. Yes, a lot can change in that time, no doubt. But we are really getting down to it. Make or break time for really nearly all of these campaigns. Let's see who's ready to close in the home stretch. Sagar, what we've really seen out of these debates in terms of poll shifts has all been concentrated among these wine track candidates. Bernie's base is solid,
right.
Biden's base is solid, and then you've got this sort of white affluent liberal searching.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it on the show all the time, which is that white liberal support is really something that is not really cohered around anybody. They don't particularly like Joe Biden, so they kind of like shift with wherever the wind goes.
They hate Bernie.
Right now they're with, they hate Bernie. They don't particularly like Biden. They're like, they'll shift to Warren, they'll shift to Pete, they'll go to Kamala, but they're really, people without a home. And ultimately, I do think they're going to settle on Warren. I mean, I think Pete at its core, I mean, he is going to have, I think, the toughest debate tonight because
I think so too.
he is such a completely untested guy, but B, I mean, he has never faced the amount of incoming fire that he's about to see. I mean, top of the poll in Iowa, he's certainly on the rise in New Hampshire. We don't know exactly where that falls, but if you're Elizabeth Warren, if you're Kamala Harris, or if you want these other people, he is the main target for you tonight, and I don't think he's going to rise to the test. I just don't think he will.
There's a lot to work with there too, and he's faced no scrutiny. There's actually new reporting from The Intercept this morning that while his Douglas plan calls for 25% of federal government contracts to go to African Americans, only 3% went to African Americans while he was mayor. He's faced basically zero scrutiny for the one record that we have to look at, which is his time at mayor.
It's a very checkered past. I mean, the demoting of this black police chief, the black constituency in South Bend is not a fan of Pete Buttigieg. The minority businesses. I mean, we can go. I mean, we have such a small record, and I think we already know how much of that has already played out.
Yeah. So I agree. Probably tough night for Pete tonight. Sagar, looking forward to your radar next.